Welcome to the August Division III webinar. I'm Grace Hadlick, and today I will be joined with Louise McCleary and Bill Reagan. A few reminders before we get started. This PowerPoint is available now on the webinars page on the ncaa.org. The recordings will be available by the end of this week and will be sent out to all who have registered. To ask questions, use the Q&A function at the top of your screen, and we will answer them at an appropriate time. Let's get started. Today, I will cover the Student Athlete Advisory Committee updates. Then I will pass it over to Bill to cover the council updates. Then Louise will close out our webinar with some Division III updates. Now for our Division III Student Athlete Advisory Committee updates. I'm excited to walk you through some important national SAAC updates as we kick off another impactful year together. We've had a lot of momentum building behind the scenes, and we can't wait to share what we've been up to. Let's start with some exciting news. As many of you know, following the passage of the 2025 legislation, every single Division III conference has now primary representatives on national SAAC. Just about 2 weeks ago, we officially welcomed over 20 new faces to the table. These new members are already bringing incredible energy, diverse perspectives, and fresh ideas to our work. We're thrilled to have them on board and even more excited to continuing amplifying the student athlete voice through this expanded representation. During our July meeting, the committee received several updates across both the Division III and association-wide landscape. We covered key topics with the NCAA staff that impact student athletes, including updates on the transfer portal, the House settlement, which is now referred to as the House injunction, mental health first aid resources, championship live streaming. We also heard from the NCAA inclusion team and brainstormed new ideas for their social media campaign, and were provided updates from cross-divisional SAAC working groups. These discussions continue to guide our work and elevate the student athlete voice across the association. These topics are evolving fast, so stay engaged and informed as we head into the fall. Legislation is always a key focus for us. This summer, the committee reviewed the initial slate of legislative proposals leading into the 2026 NCAA convention. We'll revisit those proposals again during our fall video conference and begin gathering feedback from our conferences before taking official positions during our November meeting. It's a process and responsibility that we take seriously, and your input, as always, is essential. Looking ahead to the 2025-26 school year, our committee's focus is clear: empowering the student-athlete voice. With the support of administrators and campus staff, we want to build stronger relationships across our membership, and that starts with communication. All primary national SAAC representatives should introduce themselves to the respective campus and conference SAAC advisors, collect updated contact information, and build bridges, not just connections. You can find the full list of updated conference representatives on the Division III SAAC page on ncaa.org. Next, let's talk subcommittees. We got some exciting updates here. SAAC members solidified 3 subcommittees for the upcoming academic year. Mental and physical health, back for another impactful year. This group is diving into life after sport, an important and timely focus. They're passionate about providing resources and real conversations around mental and physical well-being. D3 Download, our newest subcommittee. This group is working on educational content around all things Division III, from sports offering and key facts to understanding SAAC structure and our national role. It's your one-stop shop for all things Division III. And finally, congressional engagement. This subcommittee continues to focus on storytelling and the student-athlete advocacy. We're working to help campuses and conferences engage with legislators in meaningful ways and highlight the true value of the Division III student-athlete experience. As we close out our 14th year of partnership with Special Olympics, we're incredibly proud to share that nearly 3,000 student-athletes dedicated over 9 hours to Special Olympics events this past academic year, raising more than $27,000 in support. That's powerful. As we enter year 15 of this incredible partnership, let's keep that momentum going. If your campus or conference hosted an event, Don't forget to submit your report form and share your photos and stories via the Special Olympics Partnership page on ncaa.org. Your time, your heart, and your energy truly make a difference. As student athletes return to campus and fall sports begin, let's keep showing up loudly and proudly for one another. Please be sure to follow Division III SAAC on Instagram and on X. Engage, reshare, and celebrate the work that we're doing. And always remember, the power of SAAC starts with us. Together, let's continue to discover, develop, and dedicate ourselves to serving our peers and shaping the future of Division III. As always, let's go Division III. And now I will turn it over to Bill for the council updates.
Right. Thank you, Grace, and good afternoon, everybody. As Grace said, we'll provide you just a couple updates from our council, some of the more high-level items, and then I'll turn it over to Louise to kind of talk about our budgeting as we move forward. So to begin with, we'll talk about the transfer portal. Next slide, Allie. Yeah, so our management council approved a recommendation from our interpretations legislation committee to sponsor a proposal for the 26th convention that would require Division III to use the transfer portal. The proposal would do a few things. First, it would replace our current permission to contact, which is that written form that is sent between institutions that say that they have permission to contact a student athlete during the recruiting process, to a notification model. And that notification model will really be facilitated through the transfer portal. So you just enter the student athlete's information in the transfer portal, and now the other institutions know that they have an opportunity to speak with that particular student athlete. It would also require that the student athlete's information be submitted in the transfer portal within 7 days after the institution is notified by the student athlete. That is 7 consecutive calendar days. And what the proposal does not do, it doesn't alter a self-release. So the opportunity for a Division III student athlete to self-release to another Division III institution would still be available for that particular student athlete. ILC came to this recommendation based on feedback it had received from the membership. That feedback was collected through a number of different meetings as well as our regional seminars. And what ILC was hearing is that, boy, the use of the transfer portal is optional, and just the differences in how institutions facilitate the transfer process has caused some confusion among student athletes, amongst institutions, has really increased the institutional burden. So the proposal really hopes to streamline the process, provide greater accuracy relative to certifying student athletes, reduce administrative burden, and really improve the systems everyone uses to trace to track and share information. Additionally, what it will do is provide Division III with a more accurate picture of the transfer behavior of our Division III student athletes. With all the information contained in the central transfer portal, we'll be actually able to see how many Division III student athletes are transferring within Division III, as well as how many are transferring from Division III to another division. If adopted, this proposal would be effective August 1, 2026. Allie, the next slide. Thank you. The council also engaged in just an open dialogue or discussion about several elements of the Division III's eligibility legislation. Specifically, it looked at the seasons of part competition that are available, the 4 seasons, and also looked at how those seasons are calculated both for Division III student athletes and for those that are transferring in from Divisions I and II, or maybe from a different association. They really had this conversation in light of the division's philosophy statement, kind of the current legal environment that we find ourselves in, as well as understanding Division II's proposal that will go to their convention that will establish a 5 seasons of eligibility model. I've been talking about Division I, talking about something similar. Just make sure that everyone's aware that Division I is not currently talking about any changes to their eligibility legislation. A couple reasons for that. One, they want to put in their new governance structure that was just adopted recently, as well as trying to wait for some of these current legal proceedings to be completed. So the council will continue its discussion in this space, and will continue to engage the membership. Anticipate that they'll use different meetings to do that, as well as potentially use the convention to kind of hear back from the membership relative to eligibility standards for Division III. Now, I'll have the next slide. The council also adopted non-controversial legislation to establish a new structure a new governance structure to review and adopt playing rules. This was needed because Division I, as you all know, created a new structure. What that new structure did is remove their playing rules to their sport oversight groups. So there was a unique opportunity for Divisions 2 and 3 to say, how do we want to create a structure to support our playing rules decisions? That structure was adopted, and I'll explain that in just a few minutes. It's important to know that the new structure had to be in place by September 1 because that's when the Division I legislation became effective. So it was important to move through non-controversial legislation. So we had that structure in place. A couple other things to keep in mind as we talk about the structures. First, there is still an expectation or a desire for playing rules to be as common as possible across all three divisions. This new structure also does not alter the current Division III federal rules process, nor does it still permits Division III rather to continue to be able to federate a playing rule. It also allows our Division III Management Council to use its legislative authority to exempt a playing rule if it desires to do so, or if it's asked to do so by our membership. So the playing rule structure begins with a new playing rules oversight panel. We currently have such a panel. It's called PROP. That PROP group will continue. However, it will now be comprised of equal members of the Division III and Division II members. So there'll be 6 from Division III, 6 from Division II. The Division III members will be comprised of a representative from our Championships Committee, a representative from our Management Council, 1 conference commissioner, and 3 at-large spots. Those at-large spots will have to be athletic administrators. We'll also continue with our playing rules structure, which will continue with our playing rules committees for those sports that currently have playing rules committees. Those particular committees will be comprised of 9 members, 4 from Division III, 4 from Division II, and 1 secretary rules editor. That is true for all sports except for 4. Those 4 sports are men's, women's ice hockey. Division III will have 6 members on those playing rules committees, and Division II will only have 2. The reason for that is due to sports sponsorship. Far more Division III institutions are sponsoring men's and women's ice hockey. Division III will also have more representation on men's and women's lacrosse. There'll be 5 members for Division III on those particular committees, and only 3 members from Division II, once again based on sports sponsorship. I do want to make sure that everyone's aware that there is currently we're accepting nominations to fill the newly created roles, both on PROP and on these playing rules committees. So if you go to our nominating page, you'll be able to nominate yourself for one of these opportunities, and that closes on August 18th. With that update, I will pass it over to Louise.
Thank you, Bill. Before I get started, there are a few questions in the chat, so I'm going to ask Allie to direct those to the right person to answer.
Okay, first up, this one's for you, Grace. Can you please repeat the engagement statistics for Special Olympics from last year?
Yes, I can. Incredibly proud to share that we had nearly 3,000 student athletes dedicate over 9,000 hours to Special Olympics events within the last year, raising more than $27,000 in support.
Awesome. Thank you, Grace.
I'll add to that. We also just cut a check for $15,000 based on our D3 week activities that will go to Special Olympics. We're also anticipating, I think all of you know, every year all the fines that we collect, we send to Special Olympics, and we're anticipating a check in the range of about $38,000 that will also go to them from fines collected this year. So as Grace mentioned, a really special partnership that we're thrilled that we can contribute not only with student athlete engagement, but with some financial support as well. Sorry, Allie, I'll turn it back to you.
No, you're good. Okay, we have one more question in chat. Keep them coming, and we will pause to take questions after each speaker. So, Bill, I'm going to send this one to you. At the Regional Rules Seminar and the benefit session, there were 3 slides that were shared specifically about entertainment. The 3 slides titled Current State, the Review, and the Recommendation. Is the recommendation about professional sports tickets effective now? Can we provide tickets i.e. during the playing season, not in conjunction with an away contest, and if deemed reasonable?
Yeah, it's a good question. Those three proposals were reviewed by the Management Council, and those will be convention proposals. The one also included about team entertainment, to clarify that you can provide reasonable entertainment, including professional sports tickets. Those will actually be voted on at the 26th convention, and if adopted, will become effective August 1, 26.
Thank you, Bill. Those are all the questions we have for now. Back to you, Louise.
All right, thanks, Allie. Welcome, everyone. In the last 11 minutes, we're going to talk quite a bit about budgets. During the council meetings, they approved 2 budget requests, and we typically don't do that. We are finishing up year 1 of our 2-year budget cycle, but these were both out-of-cycle requests that came up to Management and President's Council, and they were approved. The first was starting this coming year with our NCAA championships. We're increasing the per diem to $150 for participants, the traveling teams, the individuals, and then $60 for hosts. What I would say that you should keep in mind is 5 years ago, that per diem was about $100. And so while inflation continues to go up, we know travel is expensive. This may not cover everything, but kudos to the championships committee, strategic planning and finance to push this through to say, how can we help our teams and our traveling individuals and our host as much as possible, starting with the FY26 budget. This amount is also in place for FY27 as well as FY28. So something that I think is a nice change for those that are participating in championships. And not too long ago, the championships committee asked staff to do a dive to say, well, how many institutions are sending somebody to championships? And so when they look back to 22-23 and 23-24, what they realized is that 80% of our institutions were either sending a team or an individual to an NCAA Division III championship during that 2-year period, which is pretty neat that so many of our institutions have that opportunity. The other budget request that came forward, and this actually came from the membership committee to strategic planning and finance and then to the councils, is to provide funding to live stream the Division III sessions at the Regional Rules Seminar. We've done that the last 2 years. We did not have money earmarked to do that for the 2026 Regional Rules Seminars. That now has been approved. That is in place. And I think all of you know this. It does not replace the once in 3-year requirement for attendance. However, many of our institutions and our conference offices are looking for education opportunities. This allows them to stay at home, to be able to get the live stream, to be able to get that compliance without leaving their campus if they're not in that 1 in 3-year requirement period. The other thing is, a year ago, SPFC took the lead and they created a budget guideline and priorities document. And what it has in that document is it identifies that we work as a division off a 2-year budget cycle. There is always a focus on how can we increase and better the student athlete experience. How can we support our strategic priorities? An example would be mental health. How do we make sure that our national championships continue to be a priority? And it outlines all those priorities. And then what it also does within that document is it says, if we have a budget reduction, and the most recent example is when we had the pandemic, we lost our revenue. What would be our priorities in terms of what would we protect and what would be the things that we would say, okay, we need to either cut back or eliminate until we get through this revenue shortfall. And that is also outlined in this budget priorities and guidelines document. Part of what strategic planning and finance said is, okay, we have the document, but we need to make sure it's reviewed annually by strategic planning and finance and the councils. That happened during the summer council meetings. No changes were made. These guidelines are given to all of our sport committees so that they understand what the budgeting process is as they are asking for possibly new enhancements to any of their championships. So I mentioned it that we are about to start. The NCAA actually has a budget cycle that starts on September 1. So we are about to start year 2 of our 2-year budget plan, our current plan, which means that in 25-26, it is a budget planning year as we are going to put together about this time next year our final recommendations to the councils for our FY27 and our FY28 budget. How the process works is that the governance structure, many of our different committees, our sport committees will start to think about what championship enhancements do we need. All of those recommendations go up to the championships committee. We expect that their first round of requests would come out of their February meeting so that strategic planning and finance could look at it in March and the councils could look at it in April. Any adjustments could be made and then final decisions would be made during the summer council meetings. That's the championship path. For our enrichment fund, we will do something similar. We work with the membership. We work with different affiliate groups. Think of college sports communicators. Think of women leaders, Nadia. We have with the commissioners put together some partnerships around officiating. We reach out to all those different groups to say, do you have any recommendations that you want to put forward that will be included in the FY27-28 budget cycle? Again, strategic planning and finance may get a first glance at those during their November meeting. They would make the first round of recommendations in March. Final approvals will happen in summer of 2026. And then we will have a new 2-year budget cycle starting September 1 of 26 that would run all the way through August of 28. The other thing that I just wanted to touch base about, because Grace touched upon it, congressional engagement, the House injunction. I think within college athletics and higher education, there's a constant swirl of, are we prepared, Division III prepared for what may come next? And I want to give all the credit in the world to our President's Council, our Management Council, our different committees, our commissioners, our athletics directors, our presidents, our chancellors, because really we started to look at this back in 23-24. And that's when we hired Deloitte and Lewis Rice to look at our finances and our programs. Were we doing things the best ways? And what we've done with Deloitte, those recommendations, is we've already started to implement key things that they said that we should look at this year, next year. Live streaming. We had such tremendous success live streaming every round of our team championships. Over 800 live streams, over 65 million minutes watched. They also said mental health for your student athletes should be a priority. This past March, we signed a contract with Mental Health First Aid to bring that to every institution. They also said, based on what we heard from the membership, how can we get more senior leadership around championships to make sure that they have a good pulse on what's happening in Division III? I think most of you heard that we have a new vice president in championships that's overseeing governance policy. They will work very, very closely with Laura and JP with our Division III Championships Committee. That is a huge win for the division. So Deloitte finished their review a year ago, and at that time, President's Council took ownership of that review. And when they took ownership of it, they created a President's Council Future Subcommittee. And this committee meets quarterly. This subcommittee meets quarterly. And they met just recently, and they identified key areas that they think President's Council and the rest of the governance structure and the membership really needed to focus on so that we could make sure that we were in a good position. They identified Congressional engagement, making sure that student athletes are not classified as employees. Membership stability. There's been a lot of movement around our institutions and our conferences. Are there things that we can look at with our NCAA standards to help maybe stabilize that, make it so that institutions and conferences don't feel that there has to be constant movement? They looked at higher education trends. They looked at the value of our branding and marketing. They looked at things of how do we reduce costs for our institutions. An example that they started to dig into was how can the NCAA purchasing collective or cooperative help our member institutions? So this subcommittee will continue to meet, continue to advise President's Council, and collaborate with strategic planning and finance, as well as Management Council. But if you think about it, we just had the House injunction, but what Division III has done for the last 2 years is that we did the outside reviews, we created the budget policy and guidelines, we created a future subcommittee that has a pulse on what's happening in terms of the association, higher education, college athletics, so that we can make sure that Division III is in the best possible position to move forward effectively. My last slide as we come up on 2 o'clock Eastern is a memo went out from President Baker about a month ago that there has been some transition at the national office. We've had some senior leaders announce their retirements. There was an audit of regulatory affairs. And when I say that, think academic and membership affairs, the eligibility center, and enforcement. And then in light of a successful House settlement, which is now the House injunction, what they decided to do was to do some reorganization. And what impacts Division III the greatest is that for Division I, II, and III, the AMA and the governance teams are merging together. And so we have a very close relationship between governance and AMA. This will only strengthen it, that it will be under one umbrella. And so we are working through with senior leadership exactly how that new organizational structure will work, how we can continue to be effective in serving the membership. And all of that will come about in about 2 weeks. By September 1, that is as we start a new fiscal year, we are hoping to have this structure in place. So once we know more, we'll make sure to let the membership know, but we wanted to give you a heads up that that has been occurring at the national office. And as soon as we know what that new organizational structure will look like, we'll make sure to share it with everyone. That is it, Allie. I am not sure if there are any questions, but I will say, and this PowerPoint is on the Division III webinar webpage. The summary of actions that highlights everything that came out of the Management and President's Council is already up on ncaa.org on both the President's Council and the Management Council web pages as well. So I'll pause there, Allie, and you'll let me know if there were any questions submitted.
No questions. I think you did that great of an update. So
all right.
No questions are flowing in.
Everyone, it's August. August means your student athletes are returning. Soon your classes will be starting. We're thinking of all of you. I think I see one question coming in as I'm wrapping this up, and I'm happy to answer it, but know that we are wishing you all the best as you start another academic year.
Do you want me to read you the question, Louise?
Yep, I got it. The future strategic priorities, I can read again. Congressional engagement, and that's ensuring that student athletes are not seen as employees. Membership stability, looking at NCAA minimum standards and realignments with conferences, growing geographic footprints as new members have been added and the strain that has on budgets. Higher education trends, branding and marketing of the division, and then ways to reduce costs for our institutions. were the initial strategic priorities highlighted by the President's Council Future Subcommittee.
Okay, no more questions. Thanks everyone for listening. Have a great rest of your day. See you next
Take
month.
care.